and data management options that are available, for Civil 3D from Autodesk. I've got a handful of slides just to talk about, and then we'll jump right into live product demonstrations. First, a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Joe Hedrick. I've been with Imaginet come tomorrow for 20 years. And that's a long time being a professional geek. My responsibilities here really include managing a team of technical experts that implement kind of civil survey, GIS technology from Autodesk. Prior to that, I worked for a private engineering and consulting firm for about 3 years. After that, I spent about 3.5 years or so in a municipality in the public works division and engineering. So, chances are I've kind of been where a lot of you, currently are in one fashion or another. So today's agenda is really to look at a couple of different ways to collaborate and share data within Civil 3D. And I think, really more than ever in today's climate, in today's world, this has become probably about 90% of the conversations that I have, with clients throughout the day. How can this be done? How can I share offices? All of my team is working from home. How can we collaborate effectively? Just because people were kind of forced to do that. Thankfully, with Autodesk, there are a couple of different products that provide viable solutions. Those are either Autodesk Vault or BIM 360 Design collaboration. Both of them are similar in that they kind of do the same thing, sharing, facilitating, sharing drawings and other associated project data. How they go about it is a little bit different, and that's going to be the point of today. It's not going to be an exhaustive demonstration of really either one of the technologies. We just don't, unfortunately, have time to do that. I would invite you to take a peek at our YouTube channel. We have done previous sessions that have been recorded and posted, that really do get probably a little bit deeper, into both of the different products. We'll summarize things at the end, and I want to make sure that we leave time for Q&A. So that being said, we're going to our goals. We're going to take a look at both of these solutions. We're going to take a peek at some of the subset of their capabilities. We're going to understand the differences, and then the benefits of each one. At the end of the day, these are very, very different. And then I want to make sure that we address your questions. So let's kind of get started here. When we think about information and managing information, there's about 5 different areas that we've identified that are potential places for inefficiency. And as you can see them on the screen, but most of them fall up or align into one of these buckets, if you will. Number one, just having a single repository for the data, right? And think about your environment. Do you share stuff just to a common network drive? But how do you send that data to somebody else, right? Especially right now, if a manager calls up and says, "Hey, can you point me to this particular drawing?" How many times do we just pick up and email that file around, right? That's going to now all of a sudden there's multiple versions of this particular file, flying around, and that creates the who's got the latest and greatest version of it scenario. Another potential area of inefficiency is security. Who needs access to this data? When do they need access to the data? I think now more than ever, security is top of mind for firms. So we want to be able to talk about that, just really making sure that the right people have access to the right data at the right time. Standards, how more than ever, we're trying to do things as efficiently as we can and have our organizations working as similarly as we can, through workflows and processes. We want the drawings to look like they were all created by the same firm. So that's an area that we see quite a bit. I started to talk about versioning, but now that everybody's really working at home, and what I'm finding and talking with clients is that people are, they squirrel things away on their local systems, so that they can work on it. I was talking to a client just the other day, and they go into the office about once a week, and they copy off from the server, the projects or the files that they think they're going to be working on. They go home and they do their work. When they go in the following week, they copy that data back up onto the server. Well, who knows what's happened to those files, in that week-long process. Who else has copied those files off and are doing the exact same thing. So there's a huge possibility of people not working with the latest and greatest data and overwriting somebody else's work when they copy those files back onto that same location. And then finally, we're just finding it's hard to collaborate, and that's the challenge that we've heard and that people have really been trying to deal with for the last 8 to 10 months. Is that now that the majority of people are working remotely in some form, how do we continue the operation? What's the best way to get to all that corporate information? Is it VPNs? That may work out, that may not work out. Remote desktops, things like that. So it's just it makes it hard. So that's what the goal of this session is to take a look at some technologies that will really try to address really all 5 of these. And now let's think about the information itself. And when it comes to a project, the one thing that I'll bet everybody will agree on is that the files aren't getting any smaller. And there's a lot more data to have to manage, right? If it's a multidisciplinary project, there's data coming from the architect, probably in the form of Revit models. There's the civil data. There could be point clouds, certainly, imagery, video, and then just everything else, PDFs and documents and spreadsheets and submittal letters, and how do you manage all of this data? Most people, or a lot of the time, we see that it's something similar to the screenshot on the right hand side with just folders and subfolders. And what we're starting to find is now that we're starting to be spread out and communication is a little more difficult, that might not be the best solution and the best way to manage all of this data. Right. Finally, let's think about who should have access to all this data. Right. Surveyors and we'll take the age-old surveyor and engineer or designer. Surveyors absolutely don't want really anybody else to have access to their data. That engineer might move my points or might slide a lot line on my parcel or something like that. Surveyors tend to be very protective of their data. Right? I say that because I do have my survey license. They're liable for that stuff. So we need to provide protections, but then just that there's those other people, architects and the MEP disciplines, drafters and the owners, and how are you managing access to all of that data. And then, my favorite person is somebody. And I'll give you a scenario that I think will resonate with everyone. I've been working on a drawing. It's been my focus for the last several days or weeks. It was perfect. When I went home one particular night, I come back, open it up a day or two later, and something in it has changed. And the question is, well, who's been in my drawing? And somebody has. Nobody likes to own up to that. And that is somebody. So how can we prevent the kind of that dreaded somebody? Right, we talked a little bit about versioning, at the beginning of trying to find the latest and greatest, and think about how do you handle versions, and for the purposes of this, we'll say a version is anytime a drawing or really a file gets modified, right? So I open up a drawing, I do something to it, and I close it. For the purposes of this, that's a version, right? How do we handle that, right? Because most people, if you're just using a Windows, folder, subfolder hierarchy, versioning is really hard because that's something that Windows really doesn't do too terribly well. So, usually what happens is people will revert to either, things get backed up on tape, and you have to call somebody from IT to, hey, can you restore this, from a backup from, a week ago or a month ago or something like that. Or, my favorite is, people start doing a save as. You open up the drawing, you do a save as, and you either append your name on the last, your name or initials on the end of the file, a date on the end of the file, final on the end of the file, and then then a second later there's a final, and then a final, this is really it, final. And these are some of the things that I personally used to do. But how are we handling that? Trying to go back to previous versions, and really maybe not even previous versions, just how can we go back and find stuff after the fact. Right? And then finally, let's talk about how do you collaborate now? How do we share data? And I think I've listed the most common ones that we're running into now. I think with really network drives being the most common, and that's the P drive, Q drive, J drive, Z drive, whatever, pick your, insert your letter there, type of a drive, right? And the thing that we're finding is it's, as long as you're in the office, that tends to work fairly well. However, when VPN gets combined with some of our larger file sizes, that's where we kind of start to have problems, right? Then people will resort to things like cloud storage, right? And those are the Dropboxes, the Box.coms, the OneDrives, the Google Drives, those type of solutions, and where the real problem is they're not built for our process, right? They're certainly not going to transmit drawing blocks and things like that as fast as they need to, to ensure that multiple people aren't working on the same version or the same file at the same time. Email is very common. The problem with that is that it's decentralized. All of a sudden now there's an extra copy of a file flying around that we really don't know its relation to anything else. So Autodesk has two solutions here, and we're going to take a peek and look at both of them. The first being Vault Professional, and the second one being kind of the newer of the two, BIM 360 Design. So in the Vault Professional world, the kind of the key points and the easiest thing is we can get to our data from right inside of the Autodesk product. right? Because Autodesk built this data and document management system, it integrates better with Civil 3D than anything else can, right? The good thing is it doesn't take a whole lot to get up and running. I don't want to minimize that, and that there is some server installations and setup configuration to go along with it. But this is something that usually within a week you can be up and running with Vault Professional, right? It's very flexible, it's very scalable, meaning that you can start small and grow it as you need to and as you want to. And it's really designed around working in projects, and I say and/or facilities, because we've actually implemented this a lot for facilities focus as well. So without really further ado, we're going to take a peek at Vault in action. Right, I am going to do this live, so there's always a risk there. But what I want to do here is I'm going to use really in both of these presentations, I'm going to use the exact same files. I'm going to try to do the exact same tasks, just so that we can see, really start to compare and contrast, the two products. Right. So that being said, right, I think everybody should be looking at my my Civil 3D screen. So we'll start with Vault, and this is a drawing that's probably everybody's seen about 100 times, in their career at the very least. And this is just one of the sample files, really. But it also happens to be a file that Autodesk does a lot of their demonstrations with as well. So the thing with Vault is when the Vault client gets installed on the system, it's going to add a tab to the ribbon interface inside of Civil 3D. And what it also does is adds a new node inside of Prospector, this projects node. And if we expand that out, we'll be able to see the project hierarchy structure that we're working on, that I've defined, for my Vault. Now, if we think about, and I'm going to go through, from creating this project, checking some files and doing some shortcuts, etc. The one thing that I hope that everybody will take away from this is that, if you're used to doing this in a data shortcut scenario, this is really not that different. It's almost the exact same picks and clicks, only we're doing it under projects as opposed to data shortcuts. Right now, I am signed in, and we're going to look at a couple of persona. In this case, Sam the surveyor and Ed the engineer. So I am logged in as Sam, and this is Sam's, kind of his first cut at some topo that he went out and collected. We don't have a project for this just yet. Let's see, let's put it under this particular folder here, so we can see where it's going to be residing, and we'll give it a project number. Right, this is no different than creating a data shortcuts project. Right, we can have a folder template should we care to do that, but just know that Vault is tracking information now. The biggest thing that I tell people that Vault can do is it essentially tracks who did what and when, and everything else is really a bonus. So this is being created by Sam. Here's the date in which it's being created, and we'll see that that project does get created. It's it's highlighted for me. There's not a whole lot of stuff in here, but now we can start to see the breakdown of how Vault is going to organize the data for us. Now, because we're ready to go, a couple of other things that Civil 3D starts to alert us to in the form of some extra icons. And by hovering over this icon, this white open circle with a green plus in the corner of it, it's basically saying that, hey, you know what, this drawing isn't inside of Vault yet. So we need to do something called a check-in to add it. And that's very simply just a right-click action. We're going to check it in, very similarly to kind of this whole data shortcuts thing, the project I want to add this to. If I had used a project template, and created a whole bunch of subfolders for my project, they would be listed right here, and I could select what folder hierarchy I wanted to put that file in. Now it's going to ask me a couple of things about, do I want to keep it checked out, right? And the thing about Vault is number one, we're never actually working on the file that's inside of the system. It's always a process of, I'm going to check it out, which copies it from the system, from the server to my local system. I do what I do to it, and then I check it back in. However, while I have this file checked out, no one else can check it out, right? This is how Vault controls that only one person is working on this file at a time. Now, what that doesn't mean is that, while I have it checked out, other people can't be referencing it, viewing the latest version that's inside of the system. Maybe they just need to extra my my stuff for their design, and Vault will absolutely allow them to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I don't think I'm done with this file. I want to keep it checked out, but let's just get a version of it, into the system and going. Comments are good, and I understand that they take a little bit of extra time to type. However, the thing with comments is, I can barely remember what I did yesterday, let alone 3 or 4 weeks ago. And these become searchable fields down the line. So I'll be able to go back, from Vault, go into the Vault client, which we'll take a look at in a minute, a little bit, and start to compose a query. If I knew that, if I knew a keyword that I know that I typed into these comments, it would become a searchable field for me. So finally, the last screen, just like it would be with data shortcuts, it's saying, hey, there's a surface here. Do you want to share that? Do you want to make it accessible for everybody else inside of this project? Kind of yes or no. So with that, I'm going to hit finish, and what's going to happen is the file got copied, up to the Vault server. So Vault's now tracking this file. We can see the icon changed. So I just have a kind of a white circle with a checkbox. It's got this whole thing about revisions and life cycles, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. But we're still able to work, right? I still have this file checked out. That's what everybody else is going to see. So I can continue my design. So maybe I want to draw a polyline, around this particular area. And let's just say that that's wetland, right? So, right, we're just, really, we're just modifying the drawing is the important thing here. And we hit save. And with that, what you see now is that icon changed colors. It went from just that kind of that white checkbox to a green checkbox, and the colors mean something. And really what the colors mean is that the version that I am working on now is newer than the version that is inside of Vault. Well, that makes sense. I haven't checked this in yet, and I just added this wetlands polyline. So that certainly makes sense. What I need to do for people to be able to see that change is I need to check it in. You'll see that this is a much smaller or less clicks to go through. It's really just this one screen as opposed to that initial check-in. I might come in and say added wetland, and I'm not going to keep it checked out right now. And what you'll find is when we hit finish and I tell it not to keep it checked out, Civil 3D says, okay, well, that means you don't want to keep editing it. So you're probably done with it, and I'm going to close that file for you. And that's really what it did right there. So I'm just going to get a new file started here anyway. And let's think about, what do people see? And here's what some people, or here's what, this particular screen has a couple of names. And some will call it the Vault client, some will call it the Thick client, some will call it Vault Explorer. And really, over the years, Vault has been around for a very long time. I will tell you that if you took a look at Vault in, I'm going to say, the early days of Civil 3D, and this is like the 2006, 2007, 8 years, this Vault may look the same, although this is, like we say, this isn't your father's Vault. It is a lot different. A lot of the issues that we used to have back in the day have really been resolved. So from inside of Vault, here's that same project hierarchy structure that was visible inside of Civil 3D. Here is my project. Here is my drawing. And first off, if we take a look at the History tab, right, we can see that here are both versions of this file. Here was the initial topo. We can see who did it. We can see when they did it, right? All of these fields are expandable, they're searchable, they're sortable. We can see, this idea of a state, right? And WIP stands for work in progress. We'll talk a little bit more about these in just a second. However, the idea behind states is what happens to a file from the very first time it's created until the last time that we use it, right? And that could be, it's approved, it's submitted, it's the as-built, whatever that final, whatever you want to call it. What is the process that it goes through along the way? And this is something that I guess over the years working with engineering and surveying companies, everybody does this. There's always been a concept of technicians work on drawings and then they give it to their manager to review it, and then finally their manager says, "Yep, this is good. We need to send it." Well, that seems to be not quite as formal on the engineering side as it is in, say, maybe a manufacturing world, but it's something that we do. It's just something that we don't quite typically, I don't think, give a whole lot of names to. So that's what this is. And my point in going through this is to show that number one, we're at the end of the day, we're kind of indirectly doing it, and number two, there's a whole lot of benefit that can be tied on to it. So that being said, like I said, we're working with Sam the surveyor here. So what do other people see? And the only way that I have to show logging into the same system twice is to just open up another window and log into it as someone else, right? And the way that I will do that here is we'll see this, and I'm going to log in as Ed the engineer. Right, so Ed the engineer is chomping at the bit to get started, on his part of this project. Right, Ed the engineer, his task is to start doing a roadway layout, and this is a really hot project. Like I say, just chomping at the bit to get started because he's trying to work as little on the weekend as possible. Right, so Ed the engineer goes into that project folder. And notice what Ed the engineer can see, right? And the answer is nothing. And that's by design, right? Over here, Sam the surveyor can see that file. Ed the engineer cannot, right? And this is something that is somewhat unique to Vault that we absolutely can't do with Windows permissions. Is that, remember when I was talking about surveying and engineering, sharing data back and forth, Right? Surveyors are very, very protective of their files, and usually that comes in the form of surveyors saving, their project information to one location or probably one drive letter, engineering saving their stuff somewhere else, and a series of, when survey is ready to turn it over, they either email it away or copy it from one location to another. But at the end of the day, we're talking about duplicate silos of the same data, and that just is begging for who's got the latest and greatest, right? If when Sam gets done with this drawing, if it gets emailed to engineering, what happens if Sam finds a bust in his data, or he has to go out and collect additional information? It makes it very, very difficult at that point to to reintegrate back into the engineering world, right? And the same goes both ways. I've seen plenty of times where survey goes to stake out something and they didn't have the latest and greatest version of the design, and they stake out the wrong stuff. So this absolutely goes both ways. But so going back to my point here is, right, there's this idea of a review process, and these states can be really anything that you want them to be. They can be as simple as you want them to be. You don't even have to use them, quite honestly. However, in this case, I've got a very simple, it's work in progress, it's submitted for review. So let's just say that Sam, the surveyor, he's ready for his boss to take a peek at that. So he submits that for review. At this point, a lot of people will ask, well, did his manager get an email? The answer is he absolutely could have gotten an email. Imagine it is written an add-on that we give away for free to our clients, that if you wanted a system generated email that says, you know what, hey, Sam's boss, there's a drawing for you to take a peek at, that would absolutely be possible. Usually what we start to find, I personally know what I do with system generated emails, and at times they don't get the attention that they deserve. So we give the option there. But so let's just say that Sam's boss, he logs in, he takes a peek at this, he says, yep, Sam, you did a really great job with this. Let's get it out. So he is going to approve it. And it is that simple act of approving it means that, all right, we can see the history of what's going on, right? If more needed to be done, that boss could have kicked it back to Sam, said, hey, keep working on this. However, it's approved. And the way that this particular vault is configured is that just when it goes to that approved state, instantly, Ed the engineer is going to be able to see it, right? But even though he can see it, there's a lock next to it, meaning that, Ed the engineer, you only have read-only access to this file, right? I didn't have to email this to anybody. I didn't have to create a duplicate file and send it and put it anywhere. We're looking at the exact same data, but yet the right people have the right access at the right time. And that's pretty important, and that's something that is somewhat unique to Vault to be able to handle this. And it's essentially it's assigning permissions based off of the lifecycle state or where that file is in the process. Right? Surveyor wasn't ready for engineering to get a hold of it until they were actually done with it, and that's the moral of that story. So Ed the engineer, he needs to do some stuff. So we're going to log out as Sam. We're going to log in as Ed. And just to kind of complete this story and show that it's, this is really no different than data shortcuts. There is the that surface. Again, you can see the lock icon next to it. There's the drawing and that it resides. You can see the lock next to that. We're going to right click. We're going to create a reference. We can stylize this data any way that we want to, any way that is beneficial for Ed. and he can start to use it, right? That would probably mean, since he's doing a roadway layout, we'll just pop in a quick alignment. And just to prove that we're actually looking at it, we'll do a quick profile from it. Right, so he needs to save this because this file is not inside a vault yet. So he may want to call this C layout. And Ed will go through the exact same thing that Sam did to put this file inside of Vault. Right, I'm not going to keep it checked out this time. So it's going to kind of instantly, well, what you'll see is you'll see it close itself again. But with this, it's detected more data, project-related data in the form of an alignment and a profile. So we'll just add all of that. And again, Civil 3D is going through that process of copying the file from my local system up to the Vault server. And then once that was complete, it shut that file down. Right. So as we progress through this, a couple of things I do want to show. A couple of other things inside the Vault system. Let's see. Let's log in as we'll do Ed the engineer here. There's a little bit of processing still happening. We are looking at the history of this particular file, and we can see everything that's been going on with it. Right, it keeps versions for literally everything. Here's the one for the layout, but there are some other tabs that are important. Basically, the uses tab is, does this drawing consume anything? Any kind of data shortcuts, external references, images, PDFs. Does this file use anything? Well, and in this case, it really doesn't. This is the beginnings of all of it. Where used is really the inverse of uses. It will say, hey, you know what? There's a data shortcut hanging out there that's actually being consumed into this layout drawing. For the most part, we don't use the change order tab, but preview is pretty nice. In that, how many times do people need to just, hey, there'll be especially a manager saying, hey, I need to open this drawing just so that I can kind of get a sense of what it looks like. Well, you know what? Here you go. You can get a sense of this. We can do distance calculations. We can take areas and lengths, not needing to actually physically have a seat of CAD to open this. Now, the other nice thing about it is these files are protected, in that, even as, let's say Sam, the surveyor here, how many times have we, gone into a file that, had an XREF, but yet that XREF couldn't be resolved. And that was because somebody either moved it or deleted it or changed it. And Vault helps to protect against that. So even as Sam, if he comes up and say, I want to delete that file, Vault's going to tell me that the file cannot be deleted. And if we look at the details, it's going to say, hey, you know what? It's being consumed somewhere else. And that's kind of a really nice feature. So before I end this this whole thing with Vault and we switch over to BIM 360, one other thing I wanted to talk about just a little bit is just some of the other things that Vault can do for us, some of the processes that Vault can do for us. And I think there's probably no more standardized process out there right now than creating PDFs. It seems like for the most part, review agencies are getting on board with PDF submittals and deliverables. I understand that that's not 100% widespread just yet, but it is certainly more common than it was a handful of years ago. And that's also something that we see that our clients tell us that takes a whole lot of time. Just being able, opening up drawings, PDFing them, etc. Well, Vault has basically it's got this concept of a job processor, and the job processor is really just a system that's hanging out somewhere on the network, waiting for something to do. And what I mean by that is, if I wanted to create, if we take a look at this particular plan, right, we'll see that it's 4 pages, fairly intricate, at least topo work or surface work there. But that's what this drawing is. Well, wouldn't it be nice just to be able to right click and say, hey, you know what, just make a PDF out of that. And that's all it really takes, is that Vault's going to take care of doing that. Now, just because my system is kind of the all-in-one thing here, meaning that it's the Vault server, it's the I'm working on it, and it's also the job processor. I pulled that window over so that you can kind of see what it's doing now, and behind the scenes, while we're chatting, Vault opened up that drawing, created a PDF, and closed the drawing, attached it to this particular file in the same location. And if we take a look at that PDF, here we go. And I know I didn't zoom in too terribly tight, on it before, but here is all 4 pages in a PDF world, right? And that's just one of the benefits, one of the things that that we can do there. So I bring that up just because it's one of the more recent enhancements to the Vault system. All right, keep in mind while I switch gears here just a little bit to BIM 360, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to flip back to my PowerPoint presentation. Let's not start from the beginning. Let's start from here. And let's talk about BIM 360 design. So some of the differences, Vault is designed to be a behind your firewall type of a solution. That doesn't mean that you cannot host it, in Azure or on an Amazon EC2 instance. However, it is meant to be a behind your firewall type of a solution. BIM 360 design is opposite of that. It is cloud-based. It is what we call software as a service, meaning that you subscribe to the system. The nice thing about it is, it's kind of similar to Vault. You can access it from right inside of any of your products. And there's absolutely very minimal things to do to get up and rolling. From a civil 3D world, there is a small application that gets installed called Desktop Connector. And after that, you are ready to roll. There's no server installation to do or anything like that. So from a speed perspective, you're ready to go. Really the difference between the two solutions is, one is completely cloud-based and the other one is a behind your firewall, meant to be an on-prem type of solution. Depending on your particular industry, some industries right now, still a lot of governments can't put their data in the cloud, so that's where Vault's an option. A lot of commercial people like the idea of, hey, I just want to subscribe and go, and that's BIM 360. So we're gonna flip back over and take a peek at it now. And if you'll just give me a second to reset a couple of things. Right, I'm going to open that same file again. Only it's going to be right, and we'll do some pretty similar steps here, just from BIM 360. Now, I mentioned in the BIM 360 world, there's a small application to add or install called Desktop Connector. And Desktop Connector is really the go-between my local system and BIM 360. And once you install Desktop Connector, it shows up on your system just like a drive. So really you could think of this BIM 360 as your P drive, Q drive, G drive, whatever. That's how it's going to work. That's how it's going to act. If I double click on that and start to expand in, right, there's this concept of a hub or a tenant, meaning this would probably be this would be your company's name's tenant, and then it will list out the projects that we've got access to. So I've got this one called Collab for Civil 3D. I'm going to be working under ABX. So this is the folder that I'm going to be working on, right? I show this through kind of windows here, just hopefully to draw some correlations as I flip through it in the product itself. So the very first thing that I want to do with this VTopo drawing is I want to get that into my project, into my BIM 360 projects. It's not there yet. I opened it up off of my desktop. So I'm going to do a save as, and like I said, it shows up like a drive, so I can say BIM 360. Here's my Imagine It hub. Here are those same projects. And let's see, I've already got one called VTopo, so I'm just going to call it VTopo 1. And we'll hit save. And really, that's all that is necessary, right? BIM 360 desktop connector is now going about transmitting that to the BIM 360 system, right? You'll see it. It basically just went through a couple of step process. It synchronized the file first, meaning it copied it up there. And the next thing it did was it locked the file, meaning that, it's kind of that checkout action that I did, but it's making sure that, what, Joe's got this file. Nobody else can have this file. If we want to take a peek at what that looks like, in the BIM 360 world, we can see it. Yep, there it goes. We can see it just pop in here. There is, that might not be available just yet, or maybe it is. So there's our file, but you can see the little lock by it. And anybody that's got access to this project is going to be able to see that little lock, and it's locked by, my login and a date and time. We can see that it's version 1 of the file, etc. The nice thing about BIM 360, is, there are some, pretty robust viewers out there, and this particular web client, I don't have to have anything installed on my computer to be able to see this file like this. I can pan around, I can zoom in on it. All of that, is done literally through a web browser on any device, right? Because we're no longer constrained behind our firewall. All of a sudden, I can do this exact same thing on my Google phone or my iPhone or my iPad. I can literally take this out in the field much easier to do site visits and site checks. Right. So again, let's kind of flip back to CAD and take a peek more here. So at this point, the way that we would interact, if you've got a similar, if you're used to using data shortcuts, there's no difference here. Meaning that, I can take this file. One thing I am going to do is let's rename this surface really quickly. I'm just going to say aerial mapping 1, just so that I don't have a duplicate there. But if I wanted to create, data shortcuts, right? This shows up right in data shortcuts. The workflow is similar. It's just literally a different place, right? I'm not pointing to my network location any longer. I am pointing to my BIM 360 hub, but we'll tell it that, hey, let's create a data shortcut out of that particular file, and it will be available to us, right here for use, right? Meaning that I can literally start any other drawing, and if I want to consume that data shortcut, all we need to do is really give it a drag and drop. And well, with the zoom extends, it will be there available for me. Now, if this happened to be my layout drawing that we were working on, right? So as soon as we save this, let's call this layout 2. And now at this point, again, desktop connector is kicking off. There's that pending action of it's transmitting it, and then you'll see it. Then you'll see it lock. So desktop connector is always keeping track of what the system is doing and when. Right, a couple of updates, that Autodesk has made, with this particular system, with BIM 360 design. Number one is you must be on Civil 3D 2020.2 or later. I know that I think we're up to 2020.4, and then obviously all the 2021 versions will integrate with BIM 360, but those are the only ones. Vault's been around forever. Civil 3D has been able to interact with Vault forever. So if you've got older versions of Civil 3D, for some reason you have to stay on those, then then probably Vault is the solution there. But it's really only for newer versions of Civil 3D. Autodesk has added on the start screen. You probably noticed over the last couple of updates for all of their products, really. They're moving to this type of an interface, so that you can really see your BIM 360 project. Here are the files. I can see literally the ones that are locked and by whom. And the second that, let's say that we come back in and let's close this drawing. Yep, I will go ahead and save that. So what it's doing, what Desktop Connector is doing, is it's again. I saved it. It's transmitting, itself up to the cloud, and then in just a second, when it releases the drawing lock, we'll see that Topo 1 get unlocked, and at that point, there we go. Someone else would be able to utilize it. All right, so I know I'm almost running short on time. Right here we can see the the layout, the different drawings, the one that's obviously still locked by me here, the one that's open. But all of these drawings, literally just you can click on them. There is a whole redlining mechanism, to be able to say, maybe to provide some feedback to somebody. Add some text. Right, with BIM 360, the idea of issues and being able to assign this red line to someone. Right, we can create an issue and let's place it right there. Elevations, and let's assign that to Joe, and Joe's got to get this done by the 12th, by Friday. Root cause is probably design deficiency. Please check elevations. And at that point, Joe's getting emails, but this whole issue is now being tracked inside of the system. So, like I said, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but please check out some of our other presentations on BIM 360 where we get into this in a whole lot more detail. So to start to close things out and wrap this up, we'll flip back to the presentation. I've got just a couple of more slides, kind of just to summarize things. Between Vault Professional and BIM 360, I mean, really the big differences is Vault's meant to be behind your firewall, and BIM 360 is software as a service. Each one of those has pros and cons, but that's a whole lot of the main. That's a really big difference between the two. BIM 360 does have mobile apps available. They're very extensive. I will say that right now, at the time of this, Autodesk is working on a mobile app for Vault that is in public beta, which is why I can talk about it. But that's coming. It's not out just yet. So Vault's very mature on the civil side. Like I say, it's been around for 15-ish, 14-ish years, where BIM 360 design is kind of the new kid on the block. And I say it's relatively new in that BIM 360 has been around for several years on the architectural side, and in a couple of months it'll have been available for civils for about a year. It was launched in October of last year, so it's been out for almost a year. Right, I would absolutely be remiss if I didn't talk about our Jumpstart service for BIM 360 for Civil 3D, and really this is, we wanted to come up with a way to really help clients get going quickly with this. This is not a long drawn out implementation service. I mean, this is truly, it's one day, start to finish to kind of get you going and productive inside of BIM 360. We assume nothing, and we take over as soon as you get the email from Autodesk that says, here's your tenant, and we show you how to do the account administration, how to add projects, things like that, as well as just the features and functionality of working in the Docs environment, as well as the using Civil 3D. And then finally, we do have a training promotion going on right now, saving 30% on all of our what we call live online classes. These are our web-based classes with a live instructor. Everybody is talking back and forth to each other. We can share screens, see each other's screens, take control of screens. It's essentially a in-person training class, just from a remote location, and there is a promo code to save 30% on that. You can sign up for those on our website at imagineit.com. So with that, I am going to ask for questions, and Gladys can stop the recording and we'll go for questions.
Thanks, Joe. A couple questions coming through already. You can go ahead and type your questions into the questions panel. Is Vault located on the client server or the cloud?
So Vault, yeah, it's a tricky one to answer, but Vault is meant to be an on-premise solution, meaning an on-the-client server type of a solution. Now, that being said, if you've got a Windows, Azure cloud or an Amazon EC2 instance, you can certainly install Vault there. A lot of people do that, but that's still your cloud, if you will. It's it's linked to your organization. It's it's behind your firewall still.
What is SaaS?
SaaS stands for Software as a Service, and there's a lot of those acronyms out there. But it simply means that it's a solution that you subscribe to, right? You don't install it, you just subscribe to it and you instantly get access.
Looks like the file size doubled after saving the same file to BIM. Is this a true statement that it will increase the file sizes?
It shouldn't have doubled, quite honestly. I'd have to go back and take a look at that. It should be the same file size. I will say that in the BIM 360 world, when you subscribe to BIM 360, Autodesk provides you with unlimited storage. So storage capacity isn't an issue at all. That file size shouldn't have increased, and if it did, I'll have to go back and take a look at why, but that isn't typically normal.
What kind of internet download upload speeds are you using during this demonstration?
So I am working from my home, like most people are right now. I do have a gigabit fiber connection. So it's roughly, well, It's never what they say it is, but it's, I average 800 down and 800 up.
How does Sheet Set Manager work within BIM 360?
Sheet Set Manager is, I'm going to say it's a work in progress right now inside of BIM 360, to be very honest. There have been some very recent, updates to come out that, if by reading all the release notes have kind of fully integrated BIM 360's capabilities and, I'm sorry, Sheet Set Manager's capabilities. I personally haven't had an opportunity to test them just yet, but that is something that is absolutely kind of a hot topic right now with Autodesk. And I'm pretty sure the most recent patch that just came out basically provides full integration from a BIM 360 side with Sheet Set Manager. By way of, if somebody opens that sheet set to lock it just like it would the DWG file.
Can I add users to BIM 360 through my Active Directory listing?
I want to say yes, but if you can just kind of, Gladys, keep that name down, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of research.
Got it. Is Vault required to use BIM 360, or can you forego using Vault?
You can absolutely forego using Vault. The neat thing about these solutions is, they're really designed to be an either or both. You can use either one of them by themselves, or you can use them both together. One of the things that I didn't show is, it's easy inside of Vault that, maybe during, one of those life cycle changes, that when this drawing gets approved, that one of the things that it does automatically behind the scenes is send it to BIM 360. And they are made to where they can work together. But you don't have to have Vault to use BIM 360.
Okay. Thank you all for attending. If you have any questions later, feel free to send us an email. You can send that to info@rand.com, or you can call us at 800-356-9050. We will send everyone that attended or registered a video recording of this session. On behalf of Imaginet Technologies and our presenter, Joe Hedrick, thank you for joining our session. Please enjoy the remainder of your day. Thank you, Joe.
All right, take care, everybody.